Let's get started. So this today is actually a presentation that I'm pretty excited about. It's actually a very exciting presentation. And one of the things that I was thinking about before I sat down was when I used to be an attorney, I really didn't know what recruiters did, and much less good recruiters. And I would call up other recruiters. At the time I wasn't a recruiter, but I would call up recruiters and talk to them and was uniformly unimpressed. I was unimpressed about their market knowledge. I was unimpressed with their background. Most of them were what I would call failed attorneys. And I don't say that in a negative way, but I just say that people that couldn't make it for whatever reason as attorneys. And I didn't like that. And the ones that weren't attorneys, which actually 20 plus years ago, the majority of them weren't attorneys, were equally bad. And so as I looked at that, it really struck me that why can't attorneys have the same sort of representation that a really good person has when they're being represented by a really good attorney? And at the time I was working for an attorney that had never lost a case at Dewey Ballantyne. He was a very low key guy, but had one of probably the highest billing rate in all of Los Angeles. Literally had never lost a case. And one thing that he did that was very interesting was he would always do so much research, like every little point that he investigated would be researched. And he would always win a lot of cases based on the quality of his research. And he wasn't a particularly good writer. He wasn't a particularly good public speaker. But it was that focus on research that made him so good. And one of the things that I saw when I was calling recruiters and talking to them and was that some of them had jobs, others didn't. Most people didn't know much about the market and so forth. And so for me, that was a very interesting thing to see that, because I thought, what if someone were to apply the same sort of logic that this attorney applies as a good attorney to the art, to being at the legal placement and recruiting business? And I thought that was very interesting. And then I'd also, before working for this attorney, I'd worked at Quinn Emanuel. And at Quinn Emanuel, they are always coming up with novel arguments and ways of winning things. And this is when it was a young firm, about 40, 45 attorneys. And I got to work directly with John Quinn and pretty much all the founding partners. And some people were very good socially and able to do things. But for the most part, they were able to take issues and frame them in a way that blew away more state attorneys. And so I thought, what if attorneys could be packaged in a way that made them seem very attractive to law firms? What if you could make an argument about why someone should be hired rather than another person, and really and make the person stand out? That was a very exciting thing, because I realized that if I was able to put that in writing and also put that into words when I interact with people, that my candidates would do better. So I thought about the research, I thought about the writing, and I thought these are two things. Like, I was a good attorney. I'm not bragging, but I did very well in law school and college, and I really threw myself into it and worked very hard. I still work very hard. Last night, for example, I went to bed about 9:15. I woke up at 12:30, and I've been working ever since. And because I love what I do. And this is just a work ethic that I apply to this job, and everything I've been doing today is related to this business. And I learn new things every day. And so I thought, what if you have someone like that and working for you, helping you look for firms? And what if you have someone like that helping you look for jobs that has the persuasive ability, who's framing you in a certain way, and then also someone that's doing this exhaustive research? Because if you call most recruiters, they're going to tell you about the 5 or 6 jobs at big firms in Los Angeles or your city, or they may not have anything, and they'll just shrug their heads, and then they'll certainly give up very easily. And if you don't get it nibbles right away. And so I thought about all that, and I thought, what if you applied the skills of an awesome recruiter to your job search? One of the things that really upset me also is I worked for this judge right after law school. Right? It was a clerkship for 1 year. And he was in Bay City, Michigan at the time, which is about an hour north of Detroit. And he didn't have this super great academic background that a lot of other judges have, but he did believe that in order to make sure that he looked very good to other judges and to the public, that everything had to be perfectly proved, meaning he would go and he would make sure that there were no errors in what he was writing, and he would make sure that, and was very paranoid about it. And so my first couple of weeks there, I turned in some sort of memo for him, that I wrote this long memo about some legal issue just because I didn't have to, but I was passionate about getting my argument across. And he walked into where I worked, which was an office, and he was red. I couldn't believe how mad he was. And he took me into his office, and there were 2 doors. There was one that he kind of closed all the time when he was working, but there was 2 doors. So he had this 2-door system where if something really freaking serious was going on, I don't know what it would be, but I'd only seen him do it a couple of times. He would close both of them. So he closed both doors and he sat me down and he said something like, turn to page 7 in this memo. And I turned to page 7 and the document had been spell checked and everything. And there was like an error there. It wasn't a big error, but it was something like, I don't know, like I forgot to put a period after a sentence or something. And he was extremely upset. He was red. And he's serious. These kind of errors are not to be tolerated and all this stuff. And this is very serious. And I, at the time, thought it was stupid. I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, why is this guy so mad at me about a period? And maybe it wasn't a period. Maybe it was their THEIR versus their THERE or something, but it wasn't anything serious. But I was freaked out when he came to talk to me. Like I had this visceral sense of like how upset he was by it. And because for him, winning was about like he's giving very polished work. So you could make fun of him for having gone to University of North Carolina for law school versus Michigan or Harvard or something. But the point is that he made sure that the work was very well done and that the quality of the work was good. And what I learned over time was that his idea was that if you turn in work that is written with typos and poorly proofed and stuff, then people do not trust the logic of what you're saying. So if you don't put a lot of care and thought into the work that you're doing, then they don't really trust the logic of what you're saying. So I started working with recruiters because I didn't like the firm I was in because they were basically at the time, they were on their way to going out of business and laying off partners and stuff. And I was scared. And they were letting associates go, not me, but they were certainly didn't have enough work for everyone. And I started going out and I looked at the quality of the work that these recruiters were doing. And it was like really bad insurance defense times 2. It was tons of typos and errors and misspellings and saying I went to the wrong law school and even things like introducing Miss Harrison Barnes. It's just ridiculous writing. These were not attorneys and they were failed attorneys. And I was like, this is absolutely astonishing. First of all, none of these people know about the firms. None of them have the ability to put together an argument. And so they don't do the research. They don't know how to argue and say why I'm a good attorney. And not only that, but they're bastardizing my applications with all these misspellings and typos and stuff. And that made me furious. And at the time I said to myself, this is awful. And one of the recruiters whose letter I saw had been ranked like the best recruiter in California or something. And I was like, this is awful. This is not how I want to be represented in my search, because I knew research and I knew that if I came up with good arguments and I knew that if I turned in really good quality work product to law firms on behalf of candidates, and I did it with substance, by the way. Substance is a whole other discussion, but that was something that I brought to it, which is like the long memos that I wrote for my judges and stuff, which you've probably seen all the articles on the BCQ website. So I knew if I did all this stuff with substance, that it would make a huge difference to the lives of people, and I would get people lots and lots of jobs. And I was so angered by this that I decided I wanted to start a placement firm. And I didn't know how I was going to do it. I just gotten married and I was making at the time, this is a long time ago, in 1999, I was making, I think, $175,000 a year, which that's where the starting salaries in law firms were $85,000, because I was working at one of 2 New York firms who were paying these ridiculous rates in Los Angeles and giving bonuses. So I was one of the highest, probably 7 or 8 associates in my class level in terms of my compensation in all of Los Angeles. I just bought a house. I just got married. And I decided that this was what I was going to do. And so that's how I got into it and what I bring to it. And I also bring an incredible level of motivation and love of this business. And so much so that it's very difficult many times for the recruiters that work closely with me, even ones that have the best possible backgrounds, because the standards of what we do here are so high. And the standards are so high that it's gotten to the point where we're actually using things like machine learning and artificial intelligence. And we have a team of numerous programmers. And personally, in terms of people that are helping me with recruiting and just legal recruiting that I'm doing, I have like probably at least 50 people. And that's how involved this business. But one of the things I wanted to get into real quickly before I start this presentation, and this is actually just a warm up, but one of the things I wanted to talk to you guys about real quickly is what really is legal recruiting. Because back in the time, I know now there's all sorts of sites like Top Law Schools, which I own and I love, or people, or other sites where people will talk about how they don't need a recruiter, or how recruiters make all this money, which most of them don't, by the way. Most of them make much less than they did when they were practicing law. There are a few good ones, like any profession, that do well, but they'll talk about they don't need recruiters, don't add anything. And I will tell you, for the most part, that is often true, but not for all recruiters, but for a lot of them, there's a lot of people that go into it that would have failed representing clients in the market, and they fail doing this too. It takes a certain type of personality to do it. It takes a certain type of drive. And it's a job for someone that wants to do something that is much different than what practicing law is, but involves the same skills. And so my thought when I got into it is when I saw this, these letters with all these typos and stuff, when I went to University of Chicago, again, I'm not bragging here. I'm just telling you my situation, and I want you to understand why I'm so passionate about this. But I went to University of Chicago, and then my junior year, someone came to me from the administration, was like, you're one of the top, I don't know, 10 students in terms of your grade point in the class and everything. And this is what you could do. You can apply for this scholarship, a Rhodes Scholarship, and all this stuff. And I was doing a lot of other things. I'd, written a book about race relations in Detroit. I was just very passionate about a lot of ideas and studies. And then I went to a good law school and did well there. But my thought was I'd made it this far. And here I was, like one of the highest paid associates in Los Angeles for my class year, which isn't that big of a deal. And I'd done all these things and I'd worked really hard. Like everyone in this call, I'm sure, has worked very hard for your whole life and your career. And this is what I got in terms of when I had a career problem. I got someone representing me that couldn't spell, didn't care about me, didn't know where I went to law school, wrote down wrong things, couldn't put together a proper letter, couldn't formulate any argument about why I was good for a cert, didn't know enough about researching firms. So they only had a few openings. And I was like, this is what I get. Like, that was how I thought about it. This is what I get after everything that I've put into my life and stuff. This is what I get. And so that's what our company stands for. If you look at other companies, they'll talk about all these different types of placements they do or how they only work with special people and stuff. And actually BCG, we work with everyone. We actually make more placements of immigration and workers' comp attorneys right now than we do of anything, because it's just a very active practice area. You don't need to go to a good law school to work with BCG. Certainly we work with tons of very good attorneys. We look for patterns and things in terms of your commitment to a practice area and different things. And then we get behind you and we represent you. And as I saw these recruiters out of the market, one of the things that occurred to me was everybody would get a call from recruiters in my law firm, and then the recruiter might send them to a firm or two firms, and they never hear from the candidate. They never hear from the recruiter again. So these were like people that were just almost fly by night. They were just circulating around trying to get resumes. And I was like, if someone comes to me, I'm basically going to be their attorney, and I'm not going anywhere. Like, I'm going to keep sending them firms. I'm going to working as hard as I possibly can to help them. I'm not going to abandon them. If they want to walk away because they get freaked out that I'm too freaking ambitious and putting too much into it, which I do, I send lots of opportunities and lots of articles and lots of emails and text. And people sometimes are just like, they don't want all the attention, but that's what we do. And we do that because I believe your career is important. So the idea is that I want to talk about today is I want to talk about some of the things that people are worried about when they use recruiters. I'm going to be honest with you, and I'll tell you the limitations of recruiters to some extent and how it works. But the main thing I want to talk about today is why I believe using a good recruiter is important. And really, there's just so much that goes into this. And it's really such a complex profession. It's a profession much more in many cases than practicing law, I think. There's so much to it. And there's so few good people in it. And so many people are in it for the wrong reasons. They don't enjoy it. They're not in it. They're in it just for the money, or they think it's prestigious. A lot of working with other attorneys that went to good law schools that are also failed attorneys. I have no idea, but that's how I got into it. And so I will get started with talking to you a little bit about some of the reasons that I think you're better off using a good recruiter as opposed to doing a job search on your own. And one of the things I just wanted to say to start is you are way better off using a good recruiter for your job search and doing it on your own. The better I get at this, the more I'm amazed at how good the difference a good recruiter can make. And the idea is there's a lot of ways I could tell you what a good recruiter does, and I could probably lecture you. We have, for our recruiters that start here, we have an 80+ hour just video training program, and it keeps getting longer and longer. And it's not watching videos like this. It's watching like intensive training videos on a database that has nothing to do with persuading people to do things that don't with sales or anything. It's just all about research and so forth, and how to, present information and how to frame arguments and about why someone's good and work on a resume and cover letters. But the idea is if you take a market like Los Angeles, just Los Angeles, you have, I would estimate in terms of law offices, I don't even know what the number is, but let's say the number, because it's huge, but let's say the number of law offices, meaning offices where there's maybe a couple of attorneys or even working, is probably in excess of 10,000. Okay. So if there's 10,000 law firms in a city, there's going to be a certain number of people in that city that are good at customs law. There's going to be a certain number of people that have all these different skills. Your average recruiter, all they do is they buy these lists and they'll get openings from the top 100 law firms and send people there and call around and try to make these big placements. But what we do is much different. We're able to actually get people in to a lot of these smaller law firms. And it's amazing. Like the difference that a recruiter can make would blow your mind. I'll tell you one quick story that right now that will blow your mind. And I've got multiple ones, but I had this girl that was working for a publication of our, honestly, I got so much going on. I don't even know if it's still running. It probably is, JD Journal. And she was basically just writing articles for us and helping organize content. And she was being paid $20 an hour. And she'd been doing it for us for maybe a year. And I had never spoken to her, I don't think, while she was working there. But at some point, I found out that she had previously worked at a big law firm. I think it was Skadden, and had a bad experience there. And it doesn't actually matter if it was Skadden or where it was, but she'd had a bad experience where she was working for this one partner. She was a good writer. He made her work all the time and she couldn't handle it. And so one point she'd been working like 24 hours, and which is common in law firms. There's nothing wrong with Skadden. It was a great firm. It's a very good firm, and there's nothing wrong with the people there. And many people have different experiences there. But anyway, one of her eyes exploded or something because she'd been open for so long. She got this huge thing. And so she was in the hospital, and then I guess there was a filing due or something. And then the attorney she was working for called her parents and said, if she doesn't get back to the office right now and finish this filing, she's going to lose her job. And then her parents didn't even know where she was. And so they were calling around hysterically. And finally they got a call from the emergency room in the hospital. And she was hospitalized for a long time and several days, and she got out. And then she transitioned over to another practice area. But anyway, and actually the firm was very nice to her, but she just had a bad experience. But she was so traumatized by working so hard in a law firm that she moved to another part of the country into a small apartment with her sister and took this series of jobs and had been freelancing for a long time before she started working for us. And so I just want you to keep this in mind. She's making probably less than $40,000 a year working for me. And she went to an okay law school, good law school, and did well there. And so one day when I found out about this, I said, if you have this experience from this major firm, and again, I don't know if it was Skadden or where it was, or it might've been, I think it was, but I can definitely get you a job. And she was not in a major market. I said, you should let me try to help you. And even though she hadn't worked for, 4 or 5 years. And she said, okay, let me think about it. And then eventually she came and said, yes, I want you to help me. And started off a lot of contacts locally in California, but I also got her interviews all over the country. And so I, sent her out to a bunch of different places. And I found one firm I'm not going to talk about the part of California because I don't want anybody to figure out who she is, but I found a firm for her in California because she was having a hard time getting interviews because of this kind of big gap. But I found a firm for her in California. She went out and interviewed with them, and the office wasn't very nice. They didn't spend a ton of time with her. The attorneys didn't seem very well dressed compared to the experience she had in New York. So she didn't really know what was going on. I mean, you can look what I'm wearing. I work in California, but this is probably well dressed for a lot of law firms there. When I worked at Quinn, people were wearing t-shirts and shorts, sandals, and this is in the 90s. But anyway, she walked out of this interview and she thought, I'll probably make more money working for Harrison's little JD Journal than I will working here. And I called up the attorney over on Monday and I said, how did you like her? And he said, well, we liked her, but she just didn't seem that enthusiastic. This is a guy that had just contacted me looking for someone. So it wasn't an advertised job. And I said, what's the problem? And I said, you guys, it doesn't look like that impressive of an office or anything. And I think that she's a little nervous that you might even be able to afford to pay her. Plus she's got to take the California bar if she comes out. And he said, don't worry about the California bar. She could take it after she's been here a little while if she wanted to work here. And I said, well, how much does the job pay? So we have to understand, we keep our overhead low and we don't look like we're making a lot of money because we don't want our clients to question our bills too much. And I was like, oh, that makes sense. And so anyway, I said, how much would you pay her? And what he said to this day, I don't even know how this would change your life if something like this happened. He said her billing rate would be, and I think he said something like between $500 and $600 an hour. I have 2 to 3,000 hours worth of work at least for her to do each year, probably more as she can handle. And the way I compensate everyone that works for me as an attorney is they get half of what they bill out at. So just think about that for a moment. So maybe she's billing out at $600 an hour. That means she gets $300 an hour, and she's going from 20 to $300 an hour. And for years thereafter, I received Christmas cards from her, and she could scarcely contain herself when this happened. She was crying. And so she never would have gotten that job without the type of arguments that I made and without the contacts and dotting the I's. And that's what a good recruiter can do. And I believe she's still there. And it's been several years. I looked her up a while ago. And this kind of thing happens all the time. And that attorney certainly didn't need to pay people that much money working for him, but he wanted people that had been at huge firms like that and had that kind of experience, and his clients were willing to pay for that. And it might even have been 700. It was something like the amount of money. It was just absolutely astonishing. And so she went from living in a small $1,400, $1,200 a month apartment. She was, splitting with her sister, her friend, whatever, to, I think it was her sister, to death. So let me tell you the problems that people have with recruiters, and certainly that I had with recruiters when I was talking. It's useful to think of all this in terms of what's a product and what's a service. And so if you use a service as opposed to a product, the big problem is you never know what you're going to be getting. So if you go purchase like a Mercedes or an expensive watch or a designer handbag, you just know based on the brand that it's going to be, for the most part, pretty awesome quality. It's going to have reliability, and it's going to have some value. It's going to be valuable because it's a Mercedes or a Rolls Royce or whatever, because you know what the product stands for and what goes into it, and it's probably going to be good. And the manufacturer is probably going to stand behind it. The problem with the service is nothing. I went to an accountant once and a retainer, and then he basically kept it and never did any work for me. I went to a doctor once when I was very sick, and the doctor misdiagnosed me, and I wasn't that sick. I had something that made hot yoga very bad for me, and the doctor thought anyway, the point is I went to see this, a doctor and got bad results. I went to see legal recruiters, and they had no idea what they were doing and got bad results. If you go to a bad legal recruiter, they may try to convince you to take a job you don't want. All sorts of stuff can happen. We don't, by the way, ever talk to people and try to convince them to take jobs. It's your decision. We're very hands off, and we do that for a reason, because it's your career. We'll tell you the pros and cons, but a company like ours, we make so many placements, it doesn't really benefit anyone to do sales like that. We would convince the law firms to hire you, but not you to do something you don't want to do. But the point is, like, services are scary. They're scary for people. Imagine you've probably know a lot of bad attorneys and have run into a lot of bad attorneys. Imagine being represented by them. That's not good. So there's good doctors, there's bad doctors, there's exceptional doctors. And when you go to see one, you never know what you're going to get. And you really don't know. There could be reviews online, but the reviews could be fake. And I've seen people try to write, fake reviews before to take me down, because I'm like a fake report, because I'm known in this business. So the point is, you never know. And when you're using the service, your goal really is to use someone that's exceptional. And the results you get from a good service, just like that girl that I placed from a $40,000 a year dead end job into a $300,000 to $500,000 a year job, or whatever the heck she made, far exceed what would happen if she went to an average recruiter, who most recruiters, by the way, would not even have submitted her in California, because you almost always need the California bar to work with a recruiter. So the problem is, if you use a poor to average person, you may be throwing money away. I've worked with attorneys and been represented by attorneys that do some of the dumbest thing or catastrophic. I was in a hearing the other day, and just where I was being represented in a matter, and catastrophic mistakes. So when you use a lawyer, doctor, others, a lot of people will talk about how the great attorney went to a great law school, or they were ranked the number one person in this, or they're the best in this. And that matters to you because you have no other guarantee. If you buy a Mercedes, you say, I buy a Mercedes. If you buy a Ferrari, everyone knows what it means to buy a Ferrari. But if you talk about the quality of service you're using, then people just have no idea, have any idea a lot of times, unless you talk about all these things. And that's one reason, by the way, like schools are so important, I think, in the legal profession for a lot of people, or the quality of firm you're coming from, because That's the only way you can judge the quality of the person doing the work. You can't judge it. I know a good attorney when I watch the attorney work, and I can tell it fairly quickly because I do this for a living. But there are plenty of people that went to good schools and are very bad at what they do. I'm sure a lot of them. But just being smart does not make a good lawyer. And a lawyer is about being insightful. It's about being assertive. It's about all of these things, having good arguments, not being lazy, not being arrogant, open to new ideas. And there's so many synthetic things that are going on in the background to make a good lawyer, just like there is for a recruiter. And I think you should think about that, by the way. If you went to a great law school, and there's a lot of people always on these that went to good law schools, and going into a good law school is only like a sign that you're prepared to be an attorney. You're 5% there, man. That's it. 5%. Everything else, not even that. And it's going to come down to your attitude and all these other things and how well you work and your client. There's so many things. So I'll tell you this quick story. This is a story about this lymph node on my neck. I had a lymph node, and I think it was on one side, but suddenly this lymph node blew up and it became like this huge thing. I literally looked like the Elephant Man. And that's not a funny thing to say. The Elephant Man is not a happy thing, but I had to go to my daughter's, I don't know, preschool graduation, and it was an embarrassment. And at the same time, on the other side of my face, all my skin started peeling off. And so I went to see a local doctor here where I live in Malibu, and she's from the Midwest, and she just graduated from, I don't know, Michigan, and she was very proud of herself and medical school. And she told me that she thought it was some infection and that I had an infection. I don't know what kind of infection gives you that, but I was so out of it, I took the antibiotics. A few days later, I went back to see her, and she started asking me all sorts of questions about whether I'd use intravenous drugs or been having sex with men while my wife was in the waiting room with my two young children. And I didn't really know what that had to do anything, but I've never used intravenous drugs. That's just not my thing. And I have not been having, I had never, anyway, it's not important. But the point is, all these questions I thought were very inappropriate and had nothing to do with what's going on. And then the same doctor sent me to the emergency room when I went back, and the thing was like hanging down like a sack at some point. And I went to the emergency room. I sat around for several hours, and they put me on a morphine drip and test. And then over several hours, I don't know what they did, but the growth went down. A few weeks later, they called back the hospital and said they didn't know what was wrong. And they sent me to a few specialists. I went to a blood specialist. I went to a neurologist. I went to a cancer doctor and even an arthritis doctor, which is fun because everybody was very old and in walkers and stuff. But none of these people could figure out what was wrong. And over the next several weeks, the thing came back again, and it was accompanied by exhaustion so far, and really bad exhaustion. And it was so severe, I was unable to work for several days. And I even went to an emergency room when I was in San Diego because I was so exhausted and pain that I went there, and I was there for an entire day while people were coming in. There was a public hospital trying to get OxyContin. It was actually very humorous. I was in a bed and everyone kept coming back. Every person that would come in while they were trying to figure out what was wrong with me, I would say they had a pain, and it was funny. And then I went to vacation in Thailand, and I was hospitalized there again. So no one could figure out what was wrong. And so after about a year, I was sitting with my wife, and she was talking to her dermatologist. And the dermatologist was a young doctor that was very enthusiastic about her job. And I think she'd gone to Harvard, Westlake, which is considered a really good, probably the best high school. And a lot of famous people were there in Los Angeles. But she was just very interested and very intense, and would ask questions and run down the hall and ask other doctors, even when she was and she knew a lot of people. She was very social, but she really cared about what she was doing. She wasn't very clinical. She had a real interest in it. And then she asked me questions. And when my wife ordered this, she basically took a look and asked me a bunch of battery questions and ordered several tests, brought in a very senior doctor. Now, keep in mind, this is a dermatologist, brought in a senior doctor she worked with. And then she asked me to come back a few days later and called me at home. And then anyway, a few days after that, she did some little research on her own and called many of the doctors that had been able to help me. And she reached a very interesting conclusion. She just found out that I was doing too much Bikram yoga. And it was, for whatever reason, it was stressing my immune system and making me exhausted. That was the conclusion. Very simple. And that was what was happening. And she said, if I stopped doing that, it would go away. And so all this suffering, all these doctors, all this hospitalization, and I did it. And everything came back. Everything never came back. I felt better. No cancer, no arthritis, no AIDS, and just too much yoga, which is absolutely insane if you think about it. And the thing that she did that was different is she took an interest in me. She asked a lot of questions. She did a lot of research. She talked to other people. She looked at what other people had concluded. And all these other doctors that I've seen had all these biases and brought different biases to what they thought had happened. The doctor in Malibu was from the Midwest and very conservative, and she assumed it must be AIDS or drugs because isn't that after all, isn't that what guys in Malibu are into? Cancer doctors assumed it was cancer and ordered all these tests. The neurologist assumed it was neurological and put me through a CAT scan. I think I took at least 3 or 4 trips through CAT scans. Same thing with blood, arthritis. But the point is that the doctor that finally saw that had nothing whatsoever. The only thing that separated her from what she did is that she was smart, but she cared about her work. And I give you this example, and I hope it helps you just as an attorney. I'm not even promoting good legal placement and recruiting here, but as an attorney, because think about this as an attorney, the difference you can make in people's lives if you actually study their problems and get to the bottom of things. And that's what the attorney that I worked for that never lost a case did. And he had huge clients and people that, like very, very wealthy clients, but very important people that you would have heard of. And I just think about what this woman did, not every day, but quite a bit, because it was something that kind of clicked with the lesson that I'm trying to tell you. And this is what the best service providers do. They care about what they're doing, and they throw themselves into it and they do the work. It's going to make a big difference, because what she solved was something that I never would have solved on my own. I never would have figured it out. I never would have known anything, and I would have been SOL. And this is the most important thing that a good service provider can do. They care about the person they're working for. If they care about the issues, they can solve problems and get things done that wouldn't get done if they didn't care. And that's the most important thing that a doctor, lawyer, or legal recruiter can do. They care about you. Now, you can look at legal recruiters all day and compared to us, for example, and you should ask yourself who looks like they really care about what they're doing. Because there are people besides me and there are other firms who care about it. But that's really, I'm telling you, is extremely important, because that's what makes a difference. That's what gets someone a better job. That's what cures diseases. That's what solves problems for people and legal problems. It's that. And so think about your life and what's important to you. Everybody wants love from the people that are close to them, whether it's their significant other, friends, children, or family. We want to be loved and cared about. We want to be recognized and thought of highly. We want to believe that we're important and that people love us. We want to be seen as successful. Everybody wants to be seen as successful by their peers, bosses, and others. And you don't get that. I'm sorry, but as an attorney, this is a very hard job. I want to be very direct and tell you that I'm in your corner. I know how hard this is, because most attorneys that I know that are very good at it, for example, have been divorced. They're never around. They can't possibly, they're so dedicated. It's very hard to maintain outside relationships. Then when they get home, they're tired. Many times their children don't care about them because their children rarely see them. Those sort of problems. So this is a hard job, and they want to be recognized, and it's very hard to be recognized. The legal profession is competitive, and it's hard to feel like you're doing a good job. There's not a lot of positive feedback you get from clients because you're losing half the time. If you're a litigator, a lot, most of us are bosses, judges, other people aren't nice to you. And so when people care about you, that's important. Everybody wants to be cared about. That's a fundamental, very important human need. And from my standpoint, if you find people that care about you, whether it's a doctor, that are service providers, a lawyer, an accountant, a legal recruiter, or someone, and they really care about getting you forward, and you're not just, I don't know what you call it, but they care, then things would happen to you that would not happen if you just hire people who are going through the motions of doing something, because there's so many people that are asleep at the wheel. Most people, by the way, are asleep. Most attorneys are asleep. Most recruiters are asleep. And most people are asleep. They're just going through the motions, and they're depressed, and they're worried. I'm not depressed, but they're more focused on themselves, and they're not like empowered by what they're doing. And if you care about finding solutions, and you're going to do well. That care about finding solutions are the ones that have business as attorneys. The ones that really put their clients' needs first are the ones that have the most business, that really think about it. And sometimes they have it and then they lose it, but they get there by thinking that way. The cancer doctor who cares more about their patient and makes sure they not survive when they have cancer. There are doctors out there that have the reputation of curing people of almost everyone they get if they find them early enough. There's accountants that can save incredible amounts of money for their clients in tax where other people wouldn't because they're just asleep at the wheel. There's lawyers that get their clients off of when their clients are accused of something that another person wouldn't. There's a legal recruiter that believes in who the candidate can become and puts a story together about them and will keep researching and connecting the candidate with new employers and speak highly of the candidate to everyone they encounter and not give up when things don't go well. And so the other thing too is there's been a lot of studies, and one of the studies that's very interesting is people that have a vision of where they want to go, meaning they think to themselves, I'm going to be this kind of person in 5 years. And then they remind themselves of that, and maybe they write it down or something. This is one of the most fundamental human development statements. It's in Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. It's in a lot of very well-known historical, texts, whether it's the Bible or Bhagavad Gita. There's all these, it's a very important thing. So when you think about who someone's going to become, who you're going to become, or who your children are going to become, or who, for recruiters thinking about who you're going to become, that has power. Because when I represent someone, I think about who am I going to make that person into? Who do I see them becoming? And then I tell firms, this is who the person's going to become. And those are the people that law firms want to get hired. And I'm going to tell you a quick secret. The people that get the most jobs are people on their way up that have a vision of who they want to be. They always get jobs. And let me explain this to you. You give me someone that went to Stanford Law School, is at a major firm, and is thinking maybe I'll go in-house in the future or something like that. And I don't know what I want, but I guess I'm not happy in my firm. I'll go to another one. And you take let's think, what's a practice area? An immigration attorney that's at a small 3-person law firm that speaks bad English. They don't even talk English very well. And they went to a 4th-tier law school, but they know that they want to be a great immigration attorney, and they're enthusiastic, and you can see it in their eyes and the way they talk and try to ingratiate themselves when they meet people and so forth. I will tell you right here, you're not going to believe this, but it's true. That immigration attorney will go much farther with less smarts than that attorney from Stanford ever, most of the time, because people care about if you're smart, but they also care about your ability to really have a vision and go somewhere. That immigration attorney will probably go farther. And it's because they have a vision. They say, I want to be the best freaking immigration attorney that's ever lived. Even if they don't get there, they're going to get pretty close. Whereas the guy from Stanford is thinking about, I wonder what's going to look good on my resume next and stuff. I think Stanford's an awesome school, by the way. I have no problems with it. I actually went to business school there briefly before this kind of called me back right away. So I'm not having anything negative to say about that school. But the point is that you take someone with a very good background and compared to someone without a great background, and the person with a vision is always going to do better. They're going to get more jobs. I have immigration attorneys like that I've represented, or workers' comp attorneys, or insurance defense attorneys, which get multiple jobs. They get so many jobs, it would blow you away. And then these attorneys from, Stanford and all these great law schools go out and don't, because they don't know what they want. So if you know what you want, it's going to make a huge difference. And if you're enthusiastic and you have a vision, there was a study that's since been discredited, but I think it was talked about in Anthony Robbins' first book, Unlimited Power. And he basically, and this study's been circulated, it's not the real study. There's something truth to it, but I don't know what it is. But I think there was a study of 1950 or something, or 1955. I don't know what the year was, but everybody that was graduated from Yale College was asked, what do you want to be doing, or where do you want to be in 30 years? And only 2 or 3% of the people that were asked the question were able to successfully had an answer. 97% said, I have no idea. And the other 3% maybe said, I want to be a doctor, a lawyer, a businessman or something. And I think the qualification was, you have to know if you want to be, what exactly you want to do. It was a very low number. And then 30 years later, they went back and they basically asked those people again, what I think it was that one of the questions they asked them when they did the follow-up was, what is your net worth? Which financial, which isn't really that important because you have spiritual and your level of happiness and all these things that I believe are equally important. But the point is that 97% actually had something like, or that 3% was worth more money by a factor of 2 or 3 or something than that other 97%. So I just want you to think about that. Now that when we answer questions on a little bit, someone may have some observations about that study because there was something about it that wasn't not completely correct. And I don't know what it was, but I believe that there's truth to that idea that people that have a vision for what they want to do become very successful. And I know in my high school class, I remember a very famous actress that is a famous actress now, and she knew exactly what she wanted to do. She's probably the only person that I really, and she became a famous actress from Detroit. Who would have thought? So as a recruiter, your recruiters are an agent and they have different types of success. And so you just need to think about that. And anytime you use a service provider, the best thing you can do is use a service provider that cares about you and what you can become. And the best thing you can do for yourself is know where you're going. And the best recruiters are going to see what you're capable of and will never stop caring. And that's what makes them different. And that's just what makes the best ones. And the same thing that makes the best doctors, accountants, and attorneys. And so the thing that, again, that I brought up at the beginning of this presentation is when I started in this business of recruiting, what I saw is that almost all legal recruiters did not care about who they were serving. They went into legal recruiting for the absolute wrong hours. And when you talk to recruiters, you need to ask, why are you recruiting? Are you doing it because you didn't like practicing law? Are you doing it because you didn't like the hours? Are you doing it because you didn't make partner? Why are you doing it? Are you doing it because you think you get to work with other important attorneys at your placement firm, but the people that went to good law schools and you share something in common? And what I found was that recruiters were often the sort of people that didn't care much about practicing law or legal recruiting. They just had different interests and they didn't have a passion really for the people helping them. They thought, this is a way that maybe I can make just as much money as I was making when I was practicing law or something along those lines, if I do well. And what an opportunity. My ego is protected because I'm working with these other attorneys that went to great law schools. Now, let me just tell you something quick, and I think it's interesting. Yesterday, and I send these emails out at text, not too often, but I notified all of our former placements who I consider people that are, part of our family and here at the company, and I stay in touch with. And I notified them all that if they wanted to, we would love to compensate them for talking to our BCG candidates they were working for that are getting interviews, just about the local markets that they're in, about the candidates and so forth. So the idea would be if you're in, let's say you're in, Seattle and you're a corporate attorney, we've certainly placed plenty of corporate attorneys in Seattle. You would, as one of our former placements, you would talk to them and get paid by the company very handsomely to basically share your insights into the local legal market, firms, and give non-biased advice to people and about the places they're interviewing, what the markets seem to help the candidates. Those aren't recruiters doing that, but those are just people that the company is engaging. But think about the kind of people that we're having do that. I'm actually not asking social workers or other failed attorneys or people that are other recruiters, which we actually have people on staff that do nothing but that. But I'm trying to get perspectives of other people that are winners and getting jobs and practicing law. But that's the kind of person you want advising you. You want to have the best people helping you with anything. When I was recruiting, I would always call recruiter. When I was thinking about using a recruiter back then, even email wasn't as popular, but I'd try to call recruiters and the phones would always just go to voicemail. And to me, that was a sign that the recruiter wasn't that engaged. And it's a sign that the recruiter doesn't care. And I always answer the phone, and especially when law firms are calling. That's exciting. If I'm here, I'm not on the phone, I always answer the phone, but I always make sure someone answers the phone. And when it comes to your career, the point is just that they didn't care. The recruiters didn't care. And when it comes to our careers, that there are really two paths you can take. Some people are motivated by helping people and caring for them directly. And there are people that are driven by things that do not involve people, which is often like engineering or working in labs, sometimes architecture, finance, construction, physicists, and so forth. And people are suited for different types of careers. And if you want to help people, it's like being a family doctor or a legal recruiter. And the closer you are to helping an actual person, the better off you are. When you meet a good legal recruiter, and I'm trying to tell you because you may not work with us and you may be watching this video just thinking about, do you have a good recruiter right now? And you may. And if you do, you should. I'm not recruiting people from other recruiters. We have plenty of, but the point is, like, how do you know if you have a good recruiter? I'm more of me personally, I'm a good recruiter, but the people that gravitate towards helping people naturally, that it's really something that they want to do and they want to see people improve. And many times there's just something about it naturally. Like I grew up taking care of a mother that had substance abuse problems. And so for me, it just comes naturally helping people that are down and or need help or need motivation. And it's something I do naturally. I gravitate towards it. I want to help people, but not everybody does. And I do it in my own way. It's not always, but that's something that makes the best recruiters. I've never seen people, a lot of times people come from transactional backgrounds, which would be like a corporate attorney or a patent attorney. These sorts of people often don't do very well. Litigators do, and people that are involved in people-centered activities do. People almost always tend to be, the best recruiters tend to be, I see someone's calling me right now and I'm not going to pick up my phone. Some of the best recruiters are litigators, I think, and that's because that's the ones that are former attorneys because they're as close to people. And a lot of them are not attorneys at all. There's no requirement to be an attorney, but it does help you identify with people. Patent attorneys, finance attorneys are often horrible recruiters because it's intensely personal and you have to be interested in people. And that's one of the things. And then the other thing too that I'll say, in addition to being interested in people, is most of the best recruiters when you meet them, they're very likable. Now, that's been the traditional thing where the ones that call people on the phone and try to get them interested, or when they meet them and they have to convince them of things. That's what a recruiter told me early on. And that was the most successful recruiters I met early on were very likable. But I'm not sure, like in a data driven environment, that is important as much as it used to be. Okay, so let me get into these some of these reasons now, and let me talk to you about that. And if you're a BCG candidate, you're probably very familiar with all this and what we try to do. But the best lead recruiters attempt to elicit as much information, personal and not personal, from you as to help you. I need a lot of personal information to be effective, because people connect with people based on who they are. They don't connect with the fact that you're a project finance attorney that went to University of Texas Law School and got a 3.6. They're more concerned about who's this as a person. They like the idea of he grew up on an airplane hangar because his family ran a small airport, and he learned to fly when he was 9 years old, or they love that kind of stuff. That's what gets people hired, by the way. I had an instance once where Morrison and Forrester had an opening in Colorado for a corporate attorney during a time, I think it was like 2000, when the corporate market and the whole United States had completely just died. There was not a single opening in the country, and every law firm was letting people go because the dot-com explosion had happened, and all the jobs, every corporate attorney practically in the country was thrown on the street that was junior, at least, or didn't have a lot of experience. And this one guy just happened to be like, I don't know, had some real strong interest in snowboarding. And so they probably got 1,500 applications, and the attorney that got the application at the firm wanted to be a professional snowboarder or something. I don't know. But got hired basically because of that, not because he had the best qualifications, but because we wrote a letter that talked nothing to do but snowboarding, which just sounds ridiculous. That's how you personalize people. So the best legal recruiters, when you start talking about information that's personal to you, like things that are interesting, like we send questionnaires, but if your recruiter is just kind of like glossing over that, then that's not a good recruiter. Like I knew once I didn't have a good real estate agent because I was selling this house and I'd done all this work. I put in like heated floors and steam room and I don't know, and very special, I don't know, marble in the bathrooms, and I don't know, in the highest quality fixtures. And I started telling my real estate agent this, and the guy just didn't care. He was just like, oh, so you bought it for this price. Now let's try to get this much more. And I was like, but you got to listen to this, all this work I did. He didn't care. He was just, you could tell he just glossed over, and you can tell when someone's not interested in you, their eyes just gloss over. If you're talking to them on the phone, they start just using filler words, and you start hearing them type and stuff in a way that you're not really taking messages or taking, down notes. So the idea is like the best recruiters really can draw out your strengths, and they can understand you, and they can communicate those strengths to firms. And so we ask a lot of personal information. We ask every area that you would possibly want to. We make sure we ask you everything that you've done, or if you have business, you don't, like what motivates you, why you went to law school, what your anything we can possibly get to help you, we write down, because in this business, people connect with people. And the reason I told you earlier, I spent all this time, and I did time telling you about personalizing things and why that connection is so important, and why we crave connection. It's the same thing with law firms. Most people in the business think that it's just about schools or practice or job, but it's a connection, and people want a connection. And if you're trying to get jobs on your own, it's all about connection. You can't go into any interview and not connect with the interviewer and expect to get a job. You're not being hired because the law firm just needs someone to do the work. You're being hired because the partner needs a friend. The partner that's hiring you needs someone to make them feel important. And I don't say that in a negative way, but they want to have someone looking up for them and taking care of their work. You're being hired because if you're a partner and another partner, they need work and they want someone to go talk to things about with. Or you're being hired, you connect with a certain interviewer. I remember once I had this interview, and this is not really that direct, but it was actually a very funny experience. I was interviewing with this big law firm in New York, and when I was in law school, and the attorney, when I walked in, it was a tax attorney, he was very uptight, and you could tell just by how his clothing and the way his office was organized and everything. And I'm facing the camera right now, and so just imagine you're him. He turned the chair, so when he was interviewing me, I had to sit like this and look over. But he actually moved it before I sat down. And so I was like, okay, this must be what he wants. He may not want me looking at him directly because maybe he's got some issues, or maybe he wants to feel a sense of superiority. And so I was like, he was an associate, but he was, I guess, the head of the hiring committee or something. So I was like, no problem. I'll just sit here and look sideways like this and interview like this and not look directly at him. And I did this for a half hour. And I think the guy loved it. I think that's exactly what he wanted. It gave him a sense of control or something, and allowed him to make the connection in the way that he needed to. And I got a job at the firm, and I'm pretty sure it was because of that. Not because it was like a callback interview with him. So anyway, the point is that you have to connect with people, and you have to do it. And the best recruiters, when they represent you, what they do is they take this information about you and they portray it in a way that is very positive, that you would look immodest if you were to say things about yourself the same way. If I write a letter to a law firm and I talk about, here's a slide. If I write a letter to a law firm about myself and I say, I did this, and I imagined that I was able to do this, and isn't that incredible? I look like a complete a-hole. And I've seen people do that. And people are like, what the hell's wrong with this guy? Does he have a problem with his ego? Is he insecure? What's going on? But that's what a recruiter does. A recruiter will write things in a way, but in a way that a law firm will like. And people smile when they read that because it's coming from someone else. If it comes from you, that's not good. And so a legal recruiter, the best ones, will know how to portray in a way with that information that they get. And so the more information the recruiter gets from you, if you're one of our candidates and I'm sending you, bombarding you with text and email saying, I need you to fill out this questionnaire and tell me this and answer this question, it's because I'm trying to help you. It's not because I have, some kind of problem where I need to know about your personal life. And I don't ask about personal lives, but if you volunteer information about your personal life, most of that goes a long way because law firms want connection, really, honestly. Okay, so the next thing is a legal recruiter, a good one, is going to put a lot of thought into the work product they produce. There's a lot of different schools of thought about what the best work product is for the candidates. But with us, we go through and everything is proofread very carefully. We're making sure that the work product we produce is as flawless as we can make it. We're producing high quality application materials that are printed on high quality printers and mailed and then in PDFs and that are formatted and have done by professional designers, and they're not with the format is done by a professional designer, not everyone. But the point is they put a lot of thought into the work product, and they take that personal information that you give them and they put it into a critical, in the same level of thought that would go into a critical brief. And the audience, of course, is other attorneys. And if you're represented by a recruiter that you hear speaking poor grammar and you hear making dumb mistakes and that doesn't get back to you and so forth, that same sort of thing is going to come across probably in their work product as well. And law firms do not judge bad work product well because it reflects on you. It's like being represented by a bad attorney. If you're being represented by a bad attorney, it's not going to produce the best work product for you. And you may lose because a judge is not going to take the conclusions that a badly written brief with typos and stuff are likely to be true compared to something done by a better firm. And that's one reason why better firms almost always beat smaller firms that are composed of attorneys that aren't as good, because judges are more likely to trust the work product of the bigger firm. Just think about it. So that's just how it works. So that's one reason why it's often critical legal recruiters to be attorneys. But if they're not attorneys, it doesn't matter. All they have to do is produce really good work. And people besides attorneys are certainly English professors and proofreaders and good writers. So you don't have to be an attorney, but it's helpful. But the big thing is a recruiter needs to care about you. They need to ask questions and you need to see the quality of the work. So if you're seeing typos and bad English and things pronounced wrong and firm is just going to hurt you in the eyes of the employer. And just think about how you would want to be represented if you were being represented by an attorney. But the big thing that I talked about earlier is the best recruiter sees what you can become. And this is one of the most powerful things, I think, in the business and what makes someone good. Most successful people that I know, not all, but most, have people in their corner. They have a parent that's in their corner. They have a spouse that's in their corner. They have someone that believes in them. And how many people believe in us? And how many people have believed in you in your life? Think about that. People believing in you is one of the most important things that can happen to anyone. And if people believe in you, it changes your life. And I believed in the girl that was all beaten down and making $20 an hour at my defunct, or maybe it's still right now, that JD Journal. I believed in her. And so a good recruiter is also going to believe in you. And think about the people that have believed in your life. One thing that happens at BCG a lot of times is I believe in every candidate. I make sure that every person that we represent is getting lots of jobs, that we're constantly sending them firms. And so a lot of people get overwhelmed. They're like, this is too much. Like, why are they sending me all these firms? Are they trying to? And the point is, we believe in you. I want your permission to call up this firm and say, you need to see this person. That's what I want. And I want your permission to do that because I believe in you. And if you're not getting a lot of interest, if you're not getting a lot of firms from your recruiter, that means that maybe the recruiter is a little bit more concerned about their reputation than yours. I had a recruiter once working for us and he actually used to practice law with me. And I asked him to come work for me when I was young, starting in this business. And he would only send people, like, he would get a great candidate that I would get for him. And then he would only send that person to 2 or 3 firms. And the only reason he would do that is he would make sure before he sent them that they would absolutely almost certainly get an interview. So he would make sure that the firm had an opening that was perfect and that the candidate was a little bit more qualified than the average person working there and all this stuff because it was about him. And he didn't want to feel rejected by the firms. His vision was about himself, not feeling rejected. And I've had cases. I had a case once where I had this amazing attorney that he was working at a big firm in Washington, D.C., a great firm. And he'd gone to, I think, University of Chicago Law School, was one of the top students in his class and very highly ranked and had all these personal issues. I don't know, but he started work at this firm and they were asking him to work on a client when the solution was very straightforward. Like it was something like they wanted him to spend 100 hours researching and writing a memo about something when they already knew the answer and there was no reason to do it. And so he went to the partner. He said, there's no reason for me to write this memo. The answer is very clear. I don't think we should be doing this work. Why don't you save the client all this money? And it was a young junior partner. The partner, he was trying to, get a lot of billable hours in. And he saw this is not playing the game and they fired him. But the problem was he was like maybe 5 or 6 months into his first year of practice. And I think they gave him some time to find a job, like a month or whatever. So he called around all the recruiters in Washington, D.C. and everyone said, we don't have any jobs for you. And we can't help you and good luck. And sorry you're losing your job, man, but we also don't help people that are unemployed. This is the response he got after making like 15 phone calls. Somehow he got through to me. And I said, this is not a problem. Within a week or two, I'd sent him to tons of firms in Washington, D.C. I think he got jobs at Quinn Emanuel, maybe Boyce Schiller. But anyway, by that point, I don't know what happened to him. Anyway, I was able to get him jobs and that made a huge difference for him and rescued his self-esteem. And he got these jobs before he actually lost his job, before he was off the website and voicemail and so forth. So the point is, I saw what he could become. Other people didn't. And we're more afraid of the reputation and sending someone to firms without openings. So we have to be careful. And that's the kind of thing, by the way, when I was at Quinn, they would always take risk. And people that are really good at things, whether it's Steve Jobs or every great CEO of most companies are risk takers. It's not about being a cookie cutter and following the herd. And that's what the great leaders of all companies do, by the way, is they do things that other people don't. How do you think Elon Musk would do if he was working in General Motors? Or do you think he would be a good employee? Come on. Or do you think, would you want to have Elon Musk for you if you were at General Motors? He would lose his job in a second. So that's the idea of leaders see things that other people don't. And you having a cookie cutter recruiter that is just following the rules may not help you. If you're unhappy with the people you're practicing law with, then they may see you working with a group of people that are like you. So they'll understand the cultures of firms. Different firms have different cultures. Many times when I send people these large firm lists, I may send someone, say hypothetically, you're working with me and one day I send you 15 firms. There's a couple different reactions. One reaction is, Harrison's sending me all these firms because he's trying to bombard me around the town and give me all this. But no, I may be saying that there's a firm for you that's right. And you need to see who you jump out to and who do you connect with. I had a case once where I had this guy that was actually my co-clerk, not co-clerk, but he clerked for the same judge I did. And he was unbelievably conservative. And I think he was like president of the Federalist Society and pictures of all these Republican heroes and stuff up in his apartment, just a very diehard Republican. And he was in San Francisco and I don't know what he was doing there. I think he'd gone to work at a big law firm or something and he wanted to get a job. And I got him a job at a firm in San Francisco that was one of the few firms there that was filled with a bunch of hardcore Republicans. I might've been the only one and they loved him. And so the point is, I didn't know anything about that firm before I sent him there. I said, let's look at all these small firms. So when you do something like that, and when you're looking at a lot of different firms in the market, like you can many times find something that enables you to become who you can become. And so going to a firm with a bunch of conservatives, if that's who you are in San Francisco, wow, I mean, that's going to make you happy compared to most of the firms that are not like that. So the idea of seeing you as someone that's going to become a much better person than you are, that's going to find a firm where you're happy, can make a huge difference in your life. And that's what people do. Just again, think of what people have done that have believed in you. The other thing about a good legal recruiter is you're going to hear from them all the time. So it's not like you're going to get a phone call that you're going to send your resume and never hear from them again. Most people that I work with hear from me a lot. And you'll hear from me. I send you a report every week about what's going on. I send you articles. I invite people to webinars like this. I do everything I possibly can I send people jobs. And it's not like a job search. Sometimes you start and you could be done in a couple of days in a job search, but in most cases, it takes a lot longer than that. And so every attorney I work with, most all of them hear from me at least once a week. And they don't know why they're hearing from me so much. And they think this is really unusual. Why is he? But the reason is that I have a huge staff of people. We are using very sophisticated databases. Nothing exists like it in the legal profession. I'm not saying that to brag. I'm saying because I care about this work. And we're finding new firms and making suggestions several times a week. And I never stop working with people. It's not, oh, this person didn't get an interview, I better move on and work my time somewhere else. No, we'll staff up and continue working with people because that's just how it works. Unless you stop responding, get a job or whatever, then I continue working with people. And that just doesn't work that way with a lot of recruiters. And it's your life. An attorney's not going to stop representing you halfway through a case. That's insane. Think about that. It just doesn't happen. So that's what I do. Most recruiters, and this is the way the market works for most places, they'll send you to a few firms. And if they don't work out, you'll never hear from them again. Mainly because they can't do anything else. They only have a couple of jobs. They may be embarrassed that they weren't able to get you an interview, or just feel, oh, if this firm doesn't like them, there must be something wrong with them. And they think that because they're not very experienced or don't really understand the market or believe in you. But a good recruiter will work with you and they'll stick behind you and you'll continually be hearing from them. The other thing a good recruiter does that's important, I would estimate that 50% of my interviews, maybe more, are people or candidates that the law firm decides to interview them after I've followed up with a law firm 2 or 3 times. Think about that. So if you were to apply to a law firm and not hear anything or get a rejection email, that's one thing. But with me, if you apply to a law firm, what happens is I send the firm's reports each week. I send them reports. I say, this person matches this job. I send them your information about you that's personalized. And I follow up and I say, do you have any updates on this person? Do you have any updates on them? What do you think? Most studies say that for someone to buy something or get interested in it, they really have to hear from the person 5 or 6 times. Think about how many times, and they have to hear them at the right time. So think about like a moving parade. In a moving parade, like someone's not ready to buy all the time. Law firms may be interviewing people when they get your application, but then that interview may not work out. And the day I follow up is the day that I follow up again. And we do things too, like that drastically help our candidates. Like in addition to contacting people via email and having them log into our law firm portal on our website, we also have an app where we notify people of things. But then we also contact firms by fax as well. And some of them actually prefer mail, not many of them, but some of them do. And we also mail the ones that don't even ask for mail because we want to get their attention. And that works. Many times when you get interviews, I bet when I hang up from this webinar today, I will go on to my email and I will see from a law firm, there's something that says something like, hey, I just got this fax from this person. I'd really love to see them. Thank you for following up. And I may have submitted the person weeks ago or follow up. So the following up makes a big difference. So that's something that most people don't do. Now, if you do that on your own, it doesn't look good because my job is basically, I'm an agent. Like I'm paid basically and hired by you. I'm not paid by recruiters, by the way, are not paid by candidates, but I'm hired by you to go out and drum up interest in you. So law firms actually do not mind when you follow up. They respect it. They respect that effort. And it's a good thing. And we do mainly law firm placements. I mean, we certainly do other types of law firm placements. Most of the law firms that are out there, we're talking all the time, weekly, and we've been doing so for a decade. This sort of informal relationship gives us an edge because we have things where, several conversations a day where they may call up and say, hey, I'm not interested in this person, but if you find me someone with this and this, please contact me immediately. So we have hundreds of little things like that going on all the time. So we know, and then law firms return our calls and get back to us because we have access to a huge pipeline of people. And they'd be crazy not to. They also protect your confidentiality when you come through us because if they distribute confidentiality, they know that we have the ability to tell everyone about it. And so your confidentiality is protected. And all this stuff is a lot of work. It's a lot of work mailing applications. Sometimes we send pictures from our office where a lot of the mailing we do is we have an office in Utah. And sometimes you'll see these huge stacks of stuff where we're mailing things out to the hiring personnel. And it's a lot of work calling firms, and it's a lot of work writing electronic follow-ups, which would be like an email, and it costs money, it's time. And it's not something that most people will do on their own. Now, another thing that the best recruiters also do, and this is a very important thing, is they help you learn from your mistakes. Most people make a lot of mistakes in their legal careers. Most attorneys, by the way, if you've been fired and you're on this call, most attorneys are fired. Unfortunately, I wasn't doing the profession long enough to get fired, but I sort of got fired from a clerkship, but I quit before getting fired. But I think I would have been had I stayed in it, because I was butting heads about political issues mainly. But the point is that you will, and when I say political, I'm Republicans versus Democrats versus that sort of thing. And I honestly, I'm just joking around here. I work for a great judge, but the point is that you learn from mistakes, and people can see things in you that you can't necessarily see in yourself. And the recruiters are going to get feedback from a law firm. The law firm will typically be very honest with that informal relationship. They'll call up and will say, this guy needs a freaking haircut. If you show up and you've got hair down to or they'll say, we like him, but he smells like smoke and that just made us uncomfortable. Or he wasn't looking directly in the eyes when he was talking to us. Or we didn't think she would, her personality was right. She seemed too uptight. So you need to learn what your mistakes are, and candidates will not get offers and not even callback interviews. So the thing that we do is we actually have people that are, like I told you earlier, we have attorneys that have been placed by us that help prepare you for interviews and teach about the market. And then we also have professional interview coaches on staff to prepare you. And then we also get information from other sources about how you're doing. And because of all these long-term relationships with law firms, they're often very honest with us and will tell us things like, this person seemed angry or this, and that's a way to learn from your mistakes. And they can also kind of debrief you on what you may have done in your career in the past, debriefing you on things that you may have done. Tell me why you're having a hard time. And the person may say, well, I wasn't getting the work that I wanted and blah, blah, blah. Or I'm not getting the work and I really want to do white collar litigation. And I always wanted to do it. And they're only giving me commercial litigation and I'm mad. So they can, train you on the things to say and how to do things properly. And that makes a big difference. It really does. And it's something you should think about. And so every attorneys make careers mistake. Most legal recruiters are attorneys. They don't have to be, but most of them are. And they can help you learn from your mistakes and then position you in a way to learn from your mistakes and to really come across as a much better person. And I can tell you, if you ask me, for one of the best investments that I make is I learn. I like to take classes still, even though I do this. I spend every Saturday, morning when I get up or whatever time, 3 or 4 in the morning, I study. I pay consultants to coach me about things and criticize me and tell me what I'm doing wrong. And then you learn and you grow. And you should never stop growing, by the way. If you are hesitant or resistant to getting feedback from people about you and about getting that, then that's going to hold you back and you're never going to move beyond where you are. And I just pause and emphasize that, because the most important thing you can do many times is to question, what am I doing wrong? What could I do better? And listen to things like this. And if you've made it this far in this presentation, you're probably going to be pretty successful. I can tell you that right now, because there's a lot of stuff I've already covered that's going to make you successful. And if you're listening, then you really probably have what it takes. A good recruiter will really debrief you after each interview. They'll try to find out from the firm how you did. They'll listen to you talk and they'll listen to the things you say and they'll tell you where you're wrong, and they'll really help you learn from your mistakes. Now, this is actually a very important point about what a recruiter is going to do to help you. So we've been in the business of recruiting for over 2 decades. When you're watching this, it may be 5 decades, who knows, but we've been in the business for a long time. And we also run Law Crossing and other businesses which are involved in finding openings in law firms. And there's like tens of thousands of law firms in the United States that send us openings or that we monitor for jobs. It's a huge number. Every day we're getting an incredible number of jobs from law firms and from employers, and it's a huge market and it's massive. And just one of the things that I would say is we have over 100 researchers, programmers, and others, and we're using data science and artificial intelligence and all this stuff. And more the researchers, even though we are growing a number of researchers, there's so much about just our data center alone, which we don't even go in the cloud because we use so much bandwidth and so forth. So we use a data center. Our bills are huge. And recently it was $8,000 a month. And this is just for servers sitting there pinging other websites and sending out and trying to get information about what openings are. And that's a lot of freaking research. That is a lot. So visiting tens of thousands of law firms, this is a big job and it costs millions of dollars a year to have something like that going. And it's a big deal. It makes a huge difference in how you're placeable. And to do this nationally and internationally, but our focus has always been the US market is huge. And this gives you the ability when you come to us to not just apply to openings, but we also have lists of firms that are constantly always looking for people that have openings. We have programmers that are putting together, we have patterns. We know firms that, are recently interviewing types of people. And so and we know how things are going. We're constantly adding new firms. The firms in our database don't just come from Martindale or something, or I don't know what FindLaw or whatever the other, they're actually customized research where we're going and we're finding things, firms that aren't listing themselves in these public directories and so forth. And then firms that we're finding off of people's websites that they've worked on when we crawl the web and we see, and they say the person worked at this firm formerly and say, we don't have that firm, and we'll put it on. So this is huge. And this is it's beyond, I could talk about this for weeks. I could do a freaking seminar on it, but there's so much to it to do this research and to find these firms. I mean, it's actually overwhelming to talk about it, but this aggressiveness makes a difference in how successful you are in your search for a new position. So we're not just looking at firms that have openings. We're looking at firms that might have had openings 10 years ago. So if you contact us and say your position is doing, and this is legitimately, there's jobs doing this. You do aircraft finance for planes that are worth up to $2 million, which isn't a big type of practice area. But we could literally search our database and find maybe the 20 firms that have advertised those kind of positions all over the country in the past 10 years or 20 years or whatever, because we save all that information and we classify it. And then those firms, if they see someone like you, are going to jump up and down. I had an instance once where I had a partner. He was in Denver, Colorado, and he had lost his job because he was asked to retire at the age of 70 or something. And from his firm, he was at a big firm and was not ready to retire, mainly because he'd been an engineer and had gotten started in the legal profession when he was in his 50s and still had a lot of energy. He wasn't ready to retire. And I looked at his resume and it said something like he had experience with something weird, optical circuits or something. So I just did a search for the term optical circuits in our jobs database. And I found a small law firm in Texas outside of Houston that had advertised a job like that 6 or 7 years ago. And I sent him there and they couldn't believe it. They were like, holy cow, this is exactly what we need. We've been looking for someone like this. We have this and this client that does this, and we've been needing someone like this for the longest time. Thank you so much. You walk on water, my God. And the same thing that the candidate said. And this kind of stuff happens on a weekly basis. And these are lives being changed by having that sort of information. And that's what a high-powered person, that's not person, but company with high-powered research can do for you. It's incredible. And that guy was amazed. And he'd never even been to Texas, which is pretty funny. But it's a lot of recruiting firms will do a variety of things. Then they won't have people that know how to do this kind of research, like I learned when I was young, working for a very good attorney at research. And so that's part of how the whole thing works. And it makes a difference. And it can change your life, regardless of whether or not you use us or you figure out how to do things on your own with another recruiter. It's this sort of research and the resources can change your life. They do with people all the time on a weekly basis. It's working. This is a little bit about us. This is not a pitch, and I believe in what I do, but we do a lot of this stuff. You can read our state of the market reports online. And again, I didn't necessarily always believe this when I was practicing law because I didn't understand what a recruiter did. I just thought they were people that were hacks. And there are a lot of hacks out there, but it's a huge value add. And a good recruiter will get you multiple jobs. And one thing I didn't talk about too, by the way, that's very important. And I was talking about this on a meeting with our staff this morning. And this is actually a very important point. And it probably shouldn't even be in the conclusions. It probably should be back in the research or the resources. But what typically happens is if we get a job, say there's a job opening at a large firm in San Francisco for a real estate attorney. That law firm, the second that opening goes live, they may start getting a lot of applications. Now, what typically happens is when I hire people for jobs, if I put a job online and I'm looking for, and I'll get in LA 500 candidates looking for assistant jobs, especially working in Malibu. So I'll get 500 applications. Not that there's anything special about Malibu. It's just people have these fantasies that maybe this is some kind of movie star or something advertising this job. And they're going to get a big break. So honestly, you get 500 plus applications. And because everyone wants to do entertainment, they think there's a lot of entertainment people that need assistance in Malibu. But anyway, so you get 500 applications. It's overwhelming. I can't possibly click and open 500 applications. So what I'll do is I'll have a real need for someone. I'll look at maybe the first 30 or 40 applications or 20 that come in, and I'll select a couple people. And because my time is valuable, I don't want to interview more than a couple people. I will talk to a couple people. I'll have maybe someone that works for me do some screening interviews, but if I like them. And so the first 30 people I'm looking at, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the 470. And a matter of fact, if you apply, if you're like number 50 or 100, I'm probably never going to look at your resume. Now, I don't say that to be mean. I say that because I just don't have the time. It would take me 8 hours to click and to look at that many resumes. If to click and open each one, it's impossible. So this is the same thing with law firms. A legal recruiter is going to get you those jobs the second they come out. So all these servers and things that we have programmed and we've been working on these, finding, no one else does this, by the way. We're the only person. The second we get a job, boom, we give it to you, like the same within an hour if we can. Once you get that job and approve it, you're into the firm. So we can literally, many times we're the first person in the door that's ever applied. And if you're a good candidate, which we know, if you're working with us, you're certainly a good candidate. If you're contacted by us about a job, you're a good candidate. Your odds of getting that job are probably 10 times better than they would be if you decided you were going to meander over and look at a website some other time. And you probably wouldn't even know about the job anyway, because most of these jobs they're on, a lot of them are on Law Crossing. It's a secret, but they're not exclusive to BCG. If we send you an exclusive job, you're going to be the only applicant if you approve it right away. So recruiter's going to be on you, a good recruiter, to apply to those jobs. What happens in New York, for example, if you are listening to this in New York, you know that the second a big law firm comes out with a job, and they're all subscribed to different lists, whether you get it from Law Crossing or wherever, the second a job comes out, you'll get 15 phone calls within a few hours sometimes. And the reason people are calling you right away is because they know that the law firm's going to interview the first resume. So there's a kind of a rush to that. And New York is a very sophisticated market. And so you need to apply to jobs right away. It's very important. And that's why that happens in New York. It doesn't happen in a lot of other markets because there's not as many recruiters. It happens in LA to some, but that's just kind of how it works. And so the idea is a recruiter is going to push you to apply to jobs right away, and they're going to get the jobs to you right away. And that's a huge value add. And that will, just that piece of knowledge alone, by the way, what I've told you right now, if you're applying to jobs immediately when they come out, you're going to get multiple times more interviews and get hired more. Because think about it. If you're hiring someone, if you have a home repair job and you put an ad up and you say, I want you to repair my house, and I don't know, I want to hire someone to paint my house, and the first 3 or 4 people you that apply, you think one of them looks okay, you call them. Are you gonna call the other 97 later on and look at them, and are they gonna have as good of a chance? Think about it. Come on. Now, if they're following up like we do and stuff like that and getting in your face, then maybe you will. But if they have an agent like us, but the point is that that's just how it works. I think there are some times when you should apply to jobs without a recruiter. First of all, if you have a contact in a law firm, that's not always the best thing. If your contact is another associate or something like that's not always a good idea. Law firms don't necessarily like when that happens, because if you don't work out, the other associate doesn't work out, then you both self-destruct. And so they don't like that. They also don't like, you don't know how well your associate friend's doing that's recommending. You don't know if they're planning on getting rid of them. I remember when I used to see people recommend their friends to work at different firms. I think one of the firms I was at offered a bounty. They would say, I like him for this, but this is one thing I'm not going to take responsibility for, judge him on this. And so they'll share negative information too. So that's not always a good idea. But I do think if you have, contacts that are like a partner that has business, that's a powerful partner, not an income partner, but a real partner, then many times you're better off applying without a recruiter. And if people ask us that question, I'll say, who's the person? And if they tell me, then I'll say, you should apply to them. There's also like a lot of smaller markets around there where you may have local contacts that are very friendly. Or if you work at like a very small law firm and you want to work at another small law firm and you actually know someone because you see them at church and stuff a lot, then you're probably better, or wherever, then you might be better off applying on your own. I'm just trying to think of some other instances, but in major markets, pretty much almost all law firms use a legal placement people, and but the fees are typically graduated. So smaller law firms don't even really pay very much. I remember that girl that made $300,000 or whatever. I think the fee for her was no more than five. So they got quite a deal because it was a small law firm. So it's it's a huge benefit for someone to use a recruiter in most cases to do things themselves, but to use a recruiter. But a lot of times people believe that they can do this themselves. And so they believe that they're smart, they have good jobs at law firms, or they went to good law schools, and they understand how to do a job search. And let me tell you something. I've been doing this over 2 decades. I understand this, but I learned like 50 things, and I have a whole executive team where we go over just database ideas and all these things every day. And you can do a job search on your own, but I think that anytime you bring your own preconception to it and you start being your own recruiter, you can make a lot of mistakes because you can do things that are wrong. A lot of times people think certain things are right when they're not right, or they think that they've got all the firms in a certain town covered and they don't really know what they're doing, or they think that only big firms pay big firm salaries, or they just have no idea. I typically work very hard and I try to not drag people kicking and screaming to the party, but if you're one of our candidates or you're someone that thinks you're getting a lot of emails from me trying to get you to work with me and stuff, it's because I think that I can make a difference in your career. And I'm enthusiastic about it. By the way, I look at every single person that applies to our company and I respond to them, meaning to work with BCG. And I also go back and I review the resumes and our database all the time. If you go to our database and you're already in there, decide you like a job and you add it to your list, I actually look at it personally. I do believe this is a personal business. And then I try to, make sure that you're serviced in a way that brings out your best. And I think that when you work with a good recruiter, and there are, by the way, some very good recruiters that are just solo recruiters, and they have a few contacts and they do very well with those contacts. And some law firms or companies are happy to have someone out there just beating them, but most want to, see as many people as possible, but some don't. It just depends. It's my way of thinking about business. None of this is meant to be a criticism of anybody else, because I have a lot of respect for a lot of people in this market, and I do. But the big thing is that this is an important life event. And that's the final thing I want to say to you is that when you're looking for a job, your job is where you spend most of your time. It determines how happy you are, it determines how motivated you are, it determines how much respect you get in the world or feel like you're getting, it determines your income, it determines where you're going to live. And this is why I take this so seriously. A huge difference if it's done right. And by all means, if you're accused of a horrible crime you didn't commit, get the best attorney you possibly can. And if you're looking for a job, get the best, possible recruiter you can. And just keep in mind that what I'm telling you is how we do things. Other people will have different opinions about this stuff. And I'm not saying that everything I say is right, but I do know that what we do works. And not only does it work, it's getting better and better every day. And that's one of the things that I'm excited about. And we're engaged. This is a real business. This is not a lifestyle business. This is not anything like that. This is the real thing. And I'm sure that I'm working much harder than I would work doing this if I practiced law, because I love this. And did I love practicing law? There's things I loved about it, yes. But this is, to me, helping people that have invested in educations and many times have come from and have huge student loans and have come from modest circumstances and have really committed themselves to a profession where you can help other people and so forth. It is a real honor. And I feel very honored to do this. Okay, so I'm going to take a quick break and just for a few minutes. And when I come back, I will answer all the questions you have. I apologize if this went very long today. Obviously, if you get me to talk about something like this, I'm going to talk a lot because this is what I love doing. And most of the time I'm talking about issues concerning attorneys. And this is the one opportunity I got probably to talk about myself. And that's probably not a good thing, but I apologize. The questions, by the way, don't have to be about recruiters. You should ask questions that are about things that are important to you that you want to know the answers of. I think I'm getting fired, or I just had a bad review, or I just had a good review, or my firm hasn't made any partners in 3 years. What does that mean? Any questions you have as a law student or as an attorney, I'm happy to answer. And I typically, when I answer these questions, I stick around as long as it takes to answer them all. And I think one of the things I was going to say too is in future weeks, what I will do in these presentations is I will probably present a little bit and then ask if anybody has any questions at one part and then go right to the next, because I know it's a lot hearing someone talk for this much time. And yeah. But anyway, thank you all, everyone who's been on this so far, and I'm excited to answer questions. I'm just going to probably grab a Diet Coke here and maybe a little more coffee, and then I'll be back. All right, so let's do it. Let me stop the share for a second, and then I will get started with the questions. Second. Okay. And yeah, and then all these questions, by the way, are anonymous or things. So let's see here. Okay, let's see here. So I am going to do something fun here. Just here, anonymous. Okay, so the first one is, this is an interesting question. It says, what happens, graduate from law school and can't get work right away? Do you end up in debt or having to work at a career not related to make ends meet? So the thing is, everyone can get a job. So let me stop my share real quick again. Actually, let me see if I don't want to, yeah, let me just stop. Everyone can get a job. And that's really what concerns me, is when people make these statements like they can't get a job. And I just want to, I'm not even going to sign into the BCG database or anything right now. I'm just going to show you a few things here, just using Google. Let me just see here. Okay. So I'm just kind of doing this. Everyone that says they can't get a job, like this, so this is the question. People talk about, oh, I can't get a job. What am I going to do? And I really dislike that statement. There are so many freaking law firms and places to work out there. It really boggles the mind. So let's say you work, why doesn't someone just type into the chat a regular, any location, random location in the chat for me? Just some random location in the US. Doesn't matter. Did somebody try now? Okay, Little Rock, Arkansas. Okay, so let's say someone type Little Rock, Arkansas. So Little Rock, Arkansas law firms. Okay, so here right now look at all these law firms you have to choose from. These are just times, there's 10 freaking pages of them. You have Little Rock, Arkansas law firms. You have Little Rock, Arkansas solo practitioner attorneys. Okay, so you'll probably get a list of solo practice attorney, all these people, right? Little Rock, Arkansas. Right now, I've got a list of, I would say conservatively, if I were to go here and just keep this stuff, 200 or 300 people. Little Rock, cities around Little Rock. Okay, Sherwood, Arkansas, law firms. So then you have this huge list of these places. So I'm just telling you guys, this is very easy work. If you want to get a job anywhere, like the dumbest thing you can do, and I'm going to be a little rude here. If you're sitting on your ass, you're not a good attorney. Okay. And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, but what I mean is then you go and you do a search for Sherwood, Arkansas law firms. You do a search for, Maumee, Arkansas law firms. Then you can do it by practice area. You can do Maumee practice area, family law firms, Jackson, Arkansas, family law firms. You can always get work. Certain practice areas, by the way, don't give a freaking care where you went to work. Family, workers' compensation, insurance defense, immigration. Don't care. None of these practice areas care. They don't care. No one cares where you went to law school. No one cares. Stop focusing on the top 1% of law firms and thinking you're a freaking failure if you don't get a job with one of these law firms. No one does. I would like to have been an NBA player. I would think it would have been great. It looks like they have a lot of fun and they are admired. And unfortunately, I wasn't gifted with that skill. I'm sorry, I wasn't. I would have liked to have done a lot of things. So stop focusing on the top 1% of law firms, whatever you are. If you don't get a job in one of these cities, then if you want to work in Arkansas, and we could build a list right now, just using Google. And I'm not even talking about a commercial list of 100 largest cities in Arkansas. 100 cities in Arkansas? I don't even know if there are. But here's 100 biggest cities in Arkansas. Look at that. Okay? There's 100. Look at all these cities. Little Rock, Fort Smith, Fayetteville. And these are big cities. 87,000 means that there's going to be, look at that, 87,000. That means they're going to have law firms there. So you would look and you would say, what is this city? Fayetteville? Fayetteville. I'm sorry, this stuff makes me so mad because people just don't think you can get a job, and I just don't understand. Fayetteville, Arkansas. Let me see. Fayetteville. I don't even know how to spell it. Fayetteville, Arkansas. And this is just, by the way, the stuff here. Look at this. Look at this. We've got more than 10 of these. So there's hundreds of them. So guys, It's very easy to get a job. I've got news for you. Like, you have to, like, everyone on this call, please just be an attorney. This is just basic research. And this research that I'm doing right now is BCG at 3%. Wrong. Just nothing. But you need to build lists and research and do some work. You can get a job in Arkansas. You can do this in any U.S. city. Okay. Now let's just say by chance that you went to a great law school, University of Indiana, awesome law school, and you want to work in one of these firms. Most of the people that are working in these firms are from Arkansas and other small cities, with the exception of Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton, who actually went to Yale, but that's a whole separate discussion. And they went there and became the governor and the president of the freaking country. But the point is that you need to do research. You need to get out there and research and do the simple research that I'm doing and just use your imagination and research skills. This is what attorneys, by the way, are paid to do. If you had a client, just put yourself in the shoes of a client. And you representing the client says to you, I need a job. Can you find me one? I will pay you $500 an hour, which is your legal billing rate. Are you going to go and just say, guy, I checked a couple websites out there and no such luck. There's just nothing like you. I'm sorry. There's just no jobs. Or are you going to do research? Are you going to watch Harrison Barnes videos and learn about the practice areas that are marketable? Are you going to research on Google? Are you going to use all sorts of other databases? Come on, guys. Like this, I read these articles like in the Wall Street Journal and stuff. And it's just, to me, it's like asinine. Like, why are people getting jobs? There's so many people to work out there. I know every solo practitioner that I know that does family law needs people. Every immigration attorney I know that does immigration needs people. Most insurance defense firms need people. Most solo practitioners would love to have help. There's no excuse. You may want to make this excuse, but there is absolutely, without a doubt, zero excuse for not finding a job. And that's just what it is, man. And if you apply to these thousands of firms you're going to find in Arkansas, you'll probably get some pretty awesome offers. And if you don't get awesome offers, you're going to know you'll get some good offers and you'll get experience, and you should be working. Everybody should be working. This is why when I hear about attorneys sitting around doing nothing, I'm blown away because there's so many opportunities. And I just did law firms. Okay. So let's talk about this. Let's say you want to work for the government, city government offices, city government offices, for public defender offices, for prosecutor offices, prosecutor offices in Arkansas. Look at this. Garland County, Fayetteville, okay, Bub, again, boom, hundreds. Come on, guys. There's so many freaking U.S. attorneys, all these prosecutors' offices. Guys, this is not brain surgery. This is so easy. I don't mean this in a negative way, but I just want to encourage everyone. I read the paper every day. Like I go running and I sit in the sun, read the Wall Street Journal. And when I do that, and sometimes I read the LA Times and New York Times, but the point is that there's so many jobs out there. And just Harrison says, get off your ass and do research. Anybody can find a job. It's not that there's no jobs, it's that there's no good attorneys. And all it takes to be a good attorney is do the research. I haven't even talked about public interest, suggested searches, every town, every small town, every solo practitioner, every government office. And I just did prosecutor. You can do public defender. You can do whatever. Every possible combination, government office. Every possible combo of in-house type job, of corporate. Sorry, just microphone here. Corporate. Every possible combo, public interest, academic attorney job. But believe it or not, colleges hire attorneys. Guys, there's so many, ladies, there's so many freaking jobs out there. It would blow your mind, and no one applies to these things. If you're sitting in Little Rock right now and I was representing you and you needed a job, my God, come on. There's so many opportunities out there that you could find. As a law student, now, unfortunately, recruiters do not represent recent law students because they don't have any experience. You don't need to end up in a career not related to make ends meet. Come on. No. So what you need to do as an attorney is you need to go and you need to do research and find jobs and find opportunities, and you apply to them regardless of whether or not they have an So I had office space in downtown Malibu for years, and I don't know, for 10 years or maybe longer, I don't remember. But in the office space, I was in a place called the Malibu Country Mart, and they tried to develop this like ecosystem there. So the last thing they wanted was to say they had a recruiter there. They wanted to say they had a local Malibu lawyer. So they're like, will you put a lawyer on your door and say you're a recruiting firm, and then we'll let you potentially do this, rent from us. And I was like, sure, no problem. So I did that. And this is when I was still recruiting, and I had people coming into this office, which was stupid, but they just wanted to say they had a dentist, a doctor, a lawyer, and then all these other boutiques and stuff. And so I was happy to do that. In the years that I was there, I only had 2 people ever send a resume saying, would like to work for you as an attorney. And I was number 1 search in Google when you search for Malibu attorney, number 1. And Malibu's a good sized town, 13,000 plus people. So 2 people in 10 years sent me their freaking resume. One woman walked in saying she knew I was an attorney and she was looking for a job and she was getting this degree. And would I be willing to hire her? And I said, no freaking problem. And I hired her because she walked in my office. And I'm not suggesting you can if you want, but that you do that. But I'm just telling you guys that these employers are not getting. Do you think these law firms in Maumee, Arkansas, are ever getting someone writing in looking for a job? And what do you think would happen if they do? Do you think they would be excited to interview someone and feel like they might need some help, and they've been needing help for a long time? And do you think if you send it to the 50 law firms in Maumee, Arkansas, you might get I don't even know how to pronounce it. You might get an interview. And I apologize, guys, for harping on this so much, but I hear this so much. There's been all these articles running for forever about how bad the legal market is. The people that get jobs, by the way, it doesn't matter. You could go to a freaking unaccredited law school, meaning you can only practice in California, you can go to any of these things and be fine and get a job. It doesn't matter. There's so many jobs out there. You just have to want it and do the research. And isn't that what a good attorney does, does the research? Okay, I'm 55 and planning to retire from the military in about 1.5 years. Okay, that's cool. That's not old at all. To go to law school, what are the realistic chances? Every law firm will consider you a candidate for employment. I'm going through a divorce right now, which isn't that big of a deal. Actually, it is a big deal. But my attorney is 85 plus, I guess. That's 30 years. Do you remember 30 years older than you? Do you remember 30 years ago when you were 25? Probably do. But does 25 seem like a long time ago? Because I'm telling you, with advances in medicine and all this kind of stuff, the odds of you working into 85 and 90s are pretty freaking good. I had an attorney represent me years ago in Pasadena. And when I saw him, I went into his office, and I think he must have been, I don't know, it was Trust and Estates or whatever the heck the guy was doing for me. But he must have been, I think he said he was 93 or something. And his mind was sharp, his body wasn't. And so he represented me, did this work for me, and did a good job, by the way, representing me. And then the crazy thing happened is I continued to drive by his office for at least 5 years, and he was still practicing because I see his car out there, and it was always in different places. And then one day I drove, and then I think I was in Pasadena, I moved to Malibu, and then I came back a couple of years later and drove down the street, and so I'm guessing the guy was practicing anywhere between the age of 98 and 100. So you can do this for a long time. And if you're 55, that's actually nothing. But this is a mind game, so it's definitely not a young man's game. Now, there are certain large law firms that have mandatory retirement ages, but you don't need to necessarily worry too much about that. Okay, do you know of any LA hiring junior litigation associates? I'm coming out of a clerkship in a competitive district and not thrilled about returning to the firm I summered at. Yes, you can get a job. How could you? Oh, I see. You're just saying, yes, you can get a job at almost all big firms in California. A lot of people do not hire clerks but that's great. If you have an offer, make sure you put the offer on your resume. But most firms in LA will consider you to work at. So just to tell you real quickly what I did when I was coming off of clerkship. Oh, as a clerk, by the way, you can use a recruiter. You can use a legal recruiter, and I represent clerks, district, and I represent all types of clerks, but I definitely represent district clerks and so forth all the time. And you are marketable through a recruiter, and I place candidates that like you all the time. But besides me, because this is not about you. I mean, this is about you. I would make sure you have a California bar if you're trying to look in California. Or you said LA. So yeah, California bar. Very important. if you are in the Eastern District in New York, that's freaking awesome, man, because that's even more competitive than getting down to California. But make sure you take the California bar, or you've taken it, and then, or you tell firms that. And then you can apply to all the usual suspects, which are the kind of the big rank firms. And then I would also, I don't know, you can find them on Vault, and you can find them in Chambers, you can find them in US News, you can find them in BCG Attorney Search. We have a list. Apply to the usual suspects. But what I would actually do too is do some Google searches for like top litigation boutiques in Los Angeles on Google. And the reason I would do that is just because you can apply to all these boutiques. A lot of the boutiques, when I was done with my clerkship, I just sent letters to firms in California and got a ton of interviews, and many more than I probably would have gotten had I just been applying while I was in law school or coming out of law school, because the clerkship, especially if you're in a competitive thing, is and boutiques are actually a good option many times, because boutiques love clerks. They pride themselves on having clerks and so forth, and having a lot of them. And then many times there's a lot more opportunities at boutiques than there are at other firms. So when I was looking for a job, when I sent out letters, I got interviews with a bunch of big firms coming out of my clerkship, but I ended up taking a job with what at the time was a boutique, which was Quinn Emanuel. So because I liked it the best. And you need to look at as many, I would also recommend looking at boutiques. Many times if you want to be a litigator, especially if you did a district court clerkship, most district court clerks are interested in being litigators, where they go to court and argue and stuff, as opposed to appellate attorneys. And so you get many times much better experience than you get at large law firms. And I don't know how much anybody here knows about litigation, and I don't want to bore everyone. The litigation is essentially, there can be a lot of busy work, which is like discovery and that sort of thing. Typically, when you go to a boutique, you'll get less busy work, many times, not always, busy work and more substantive stuff. And in large law firms, the largest law firms tend to have huge layers of people doing stuff. So it's not uncommon. It's actually it's more common than not for attorneys in major firms to become partner without ever doing a trial, without ever leading a trial. They may examine witnesses or something, but so that's a decision you have to make. But as a clerk, you should apply everywhere. There's nothing really holding you back. Now at BCG, we have a list of firms that always hire clerks from us, but you theoretically, if you do research, they're big firms and boutiques and stuff, could find the same life on your own. So it's not like you don't necessarily need to use a recruiter. And many times you're going to get a lot of value to search on your own too. Notice that some firms claim that their firm 100% of pro bono hours are counted as billable. I realize this is mostly firm dependent. But is this actually true, or just a marketing thing? I'm not talking about bonus eligibility either. Does this actually mean that you'd be in good standing in the firm if you did 200 actual billable hours, but supplemented? And that strikes me as implausible, but if true, would be pretty great. Okay, so let me tell you, and I like your question, but when you're working for a law firm, your job, and I'm sorry, but your job is to make the law firm money. I'll tell you a quick story. If this actually, and law firm respect pro bono, so they'll respect it, but want your major dedication, meaning heart on your firm. That's the only way the firm makes money. If you want to help the poor and stuff, then, which is an admirable thing, you can certainly just start your law firm, but you might be better off making more money and giving it to charity. So let me just tell you a quick story about pro bono. So you guys, and I don't want to be like a Debbie Downer, but when I was a summer associate, I was in a big law firm in New York, and I don't know, we had some pro bono meeting, and there was a couple partners sitting in back, and then there was this associate that was leading the pro bono. And he got up and said something like, our firm, I've got the statistic, has one of the worst records of pro bono in the city, blah, blah, blah. And the partners that were in the meeting, you could tell were just seething and extremely angry. And after that happened, he'd been down the hall from me, and I saw like partners stopping by his office and just ripping his work and telling him he was doing a bad job and all sorts of stuff like that. So there really was, and I understood that they were getting back at him basically for embarrassing them in front of their summer associates, and maybe for not being on their side or something. I don't know. That was a sense I got. And I never forgot that, because it just seems so freaking, harsh, I guess. So I think that a law firm There are, if you're billing, there's a 200,000 hour minimum and you're billing 1,800 hours. I think at some point what the law firm will do is they will speak to you and change the policy is what would happen. And if your goal is to do pro bono, then, you may not want to work in a law firm, but you can certainly get away with it for a while. And if you don't want to work in a law firm, you've made up your mind, well, then you're okay. Okay. If you're unsure of your area of commitment, is interning or volunteering a good way to go? No. So you need to, as a new attorney, you need to get into the most competitive, for the competitive possible firm, the best firm for you with the best training possible. That's your only job. The reason is the quality of the attorney is training you will determine the quality of attorney you become. So think about me. So when I went to work for this judge that taught me to write very crisply and with no errors and so forth, that guy trained me and really drilled good stuff into me. If I hadn't had that training, I would have been a different attorney when I got to my first law firm. And when I got to my first law firm, everyone started asking me to proof their work. And I got assigned to the cases and stuff because of the quality of that training I got. So that was actually very helpful. So the quality of the attorneys training you is going to determine. So volunteering or interning, no, you need to get the best job you can. You need to take this stuff seriously, because if you get poor training when you start out as an attorney, you're probably always going to have a hard time breaking those bad habits. It happens a lot. Like I recently hired, I say this in the most respectful way possible, but I've hired attorneys before that come out of backgrounds maybe where the quality of the writing and stuff isn't that important, and they're unworkable. I really can't keep them working for me because they're not able to keep up or fix their work. They've got bad habits, and you need to get the best training possible, and you need to commit. So whatever you do, guys and girls, you need to take the best. You need to try to get the best job you can as a young attorney, and you also need to commit. The world is full of dabblers and people that don't know what they want to do. And what happens to dabblers? Dabblers just get taken advantage of by others. They don't really have nothing good happens. So you don't want to be a dabbler. You need to be someone who commits. Everyone dabbles. Most people dabble. But again, think about the example I gave you earlier of the immigration attorney that knew exactly what they wanted to do, went to a 4th-tier law school that just comes out of the gate kicking ass, and someone who's not a dabbler and does the opposite, but as a dabbler and went to Stanford Law School and didn't do well. So I did that because they're a dabbler and they don't know what they want to do. You need to commit. So commitment, I've written articles about commitment, and commitment's important. Okay. I got a first-year corporate associate job in a big law firm. Okay. Let's see here. I didn't get a job through OCI, but after I passed the bar exam, nice job. Wow. What are some tips you have for first-year associates coming in laterally? Okay, I'm going to give you some advice now that is going to surprise you. And I give this advice because I had this experience recently where I met a guy and I talked to him and he was getting a job at a big law firm in New York. I don't know which one it was. It was after out of law school. And he said, "What is your advice about blah, blah, blah?" And this was about 5 years ago. And I said, "You're going to get all these ideas about moving firms and everything like that. You're at a great firm. It doesn't really matter. My only advice to you is to work as freaking hard as you can and do whatever you can to stay there. Do not leave unless you absolutely need to. Do not think about going house. Do not get caught up with people that are leaving. Just stay focused and do the best freaking work you can. If you want to go in house, try to become a partner first, because those are the people that they want in-house. If you want to move to another law, wait until there's no work at your firm and it doesn't look like things where they ask you to leave, but stay as long as you possibly can." And one of the things I'll say about where I started work, Point Emmanuel, and the people that stayed there are unbelievably successful that were in my associate class. And the ones that left, I'm consider myself successful enough, but most people that left are not. And most people that leave law firms, there's all sorts of pressure especially as a corporate associate. There are tons of pressure. People will talk about how the work's bad. People will talk about how partners are bad. People will talk about how the firm's not as prestigious as other firms. They'll talk about, you will be hit with like so much negative information. I don't care what law firm it is. This is just how it works. You will be psyched out by other attorneys. Everybody will be trying to get in your head. Your only job for the first 12 years, just give it 12 years, is to put your head down and work your freaking hard as you can and see what happens to you. Because if you do that, you will have a markedly different life than someone that gives up that easily. And I'm just telling you that. Even just having 10 years of this experience as a corporate associate at a big law firm, I place people all the time that worked at a big law firm for 7 or 8 years, took 3 years off and come back. If you get that experience, if you stay in one law firm, the thing is that, and you said it's a big law firm, but if you stay in a law firm and show that employment stability, that shows commitment. And law firms want to see commitment. The commitment is really the most important, is your big offer, because if you have commitment, the next person that hires you knows you're going to commit too. Because like I said, most of the world is full of dabblers. And so you want to commit. And if you commit, you're going to do very well. Now, I certainly would love to place you after your first year if things don't work out for you. Sometimes people make horrible mistakes and they need to get a fresh start and they learn their lesson, or they've hurt their brand, or I don't know, or they just want to work at a bigger firm and they think they can do it. But if you can stick with a firm and do really well, then that's awesome, man. Yeah, I think you should do whatever you can to stick it out there and be very grateful. That makes the thing that a lot of attorneys make the mistake of, and like law firms love hiring laterally. And a lot of the reason they do is because there's just a soup of negativity that happens when a bunch of associates get together. And so those people that are negative start leaving, and they want to bring in people that are bright-eyed and bushy-tailed or enthusiastic. And they usually get a year or two out of them, and then they get negative too. But you want to be someone that's perpetually positive, and that's my advice. You want to be positive. You want to work your ass off. You want to be not negative. You want to be appreciative of the opportunity and all that sort of stuff. You have a great opportunity to have a great life for you and your family and everything, and to actually a respected role in society and all sorts of stuff. And you're lucky to have the opportunity you have, and you're entering the corporate market at a great time. That's what I would do. I would do whatever you can to stick with your job and to really make the most of yourself. And everybody, by the way, you can move firms to move someplace better. But moving from a firm that, is prestigious to one a little bit more prestigious for the same prestigious is a meaningless exercise, I think. So I don't think there's really any point to that. Okay, let's see here. Okay, this is another question. I graduated law school 12 years ago. What are my options, assuming I passed the bar? Yeah, that's cool. Take the bar, get fired up, and study your ass off for the bar. It's a lot of work. I don't even know, regardless of what city you're in. So study hard for the bar, and then apply to as many jobs as you can. And it depends what you want to do. Now, if you've been out for 12 years, I don't know what you do. But again, follow this kind of plan here where you research different locations, and you search for these types of searches and that. So people can, I see people get jobs all the time. They've been out for a long time and never started. And people start families, who knows? But the only recommendation I would have is when you do work on your resume, you want to try to make your resume something that looks good, meaning there's some sort of consistency to it. And then if you did things like that aren't related to the law, I would just list your graduation date from law school and just say seeking to return to the law after, 12 years after graduation or something. And then maybe put down some things that you've done. May a disbarred attorney be a consultant in a law firm? Yeah, I don't know anything about that, but I do know there are lots of disbarred attorneys that do work for other attorneys. They do things like they work on briefs and give them to other attorneys and stuff. There's plenty of opportunities, I think, for writing, if you're corporate, for putting together different documents and so forth. And I don't know what you're disbarred for. People can be disbarred. I had a woman working for me once that got sick and didn't pay her bar dues and got disbarred. Or no, actually, she got disbarred because her client trust account, she wrote a small check out of it of $30 or something, and by mistake, and got disbarred for that. You can be disbarred for all sorts of reasons. Obviously, being disbarred is not a good thing, but at the same time, you can certainly find work. Just be creative and just put down that on your resume you're non-barred. If people look it up, just say tell them why you're disbarred. I don't know. Okay, this is a good question. What kind of jobs can you get in a law firm if you don't have a license to practice law? Okay, so I don't know if you're an attorney or not, but there's just so much jobs. There's recruiting, there's HR, there's researcher, there's a front desk, there's word processing. Any job that you can think of, there's IT, there's security, there's any job that you can think of anywhere else you can get. Now, if you're just an attorney that hasn't taken the bar, you can always do contract work, or you can be a paralegal. Paralegals doesn't require a law degree. In most places, there's no certification necessary. You can do all sorts of things. There's lots of jobs in law firms, and there's lots of law firms. It's a huge industry. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry, I believe. So there's just a lot of opportunity. Okay, so this is a good question. It's a good question. I went to law school here in the United States. Is an LLM worth it? Could it signal to employers that I have an expertise in a particular field of law? Yes, it does. I think that a lot of times what happens to attorneys, like, and I say this in the most respectful way. Like I know attorneys that may have gone to, I don't know, a local law school, and then they want to they want to class up their resume. So they may have gone to, I don't know, Southwestern of Los Angeles, which is a great law school, by the way, but they want to look like big league. So you can get for JD. So they do things like they go to Georgetown or USC, Berkeley, all that kind of stuff. They do these things and it makes their resumes look a lot better. So you could do these things and some people think it helps the resume. And I think that there's a case to be made that it does. In most cases, it's a lot of money. It's not necessarily going to help you get into a better law firm if you just get that for that, but it can in certain circumstances. So I like LLMs. I see people can become much more employable when they get LLMs and things like health law. Many law firms require it for tax law. I like it for things like education. I got to get acquired a keyboard. I apologize for that. Education law. I've seen people programs on that. So anything that's very specialized like that can be good. And the list of LLMs it's huge, but I don't think the learning you get in most of these programs is really going to make that much of a difference in your career, right? I think that you're just signaling an investment and commitment to a practice area. And I think that law firms like it from the standpoint that their clients can see that. And so if their clients see that you're committed to a certain practice area, that can be good. So if you're working at a health law firm and it shows you have an advanced degree in healthcare, law firms that are hiring you like that. So, that's one of the things. Should I have, this is a fun question. I don't know answer this, but whoever you are, I like you. I think you're funny. But should I have a neat stubble or clean shave for an interview at a law firm? Why? Different people have different opinions about masculinity. I've always shaved, but it's not because I'm trying to do anything. It's just force of habit. I probably should try to grow something for at some point, but it depends on the law firm. So a lot of law firms are full of hipsters, especially in big cities. If you're in a hipster law firm, that could help. I think other law firms are very conservative, but I think it's still okay there. I think the thing is society has changed so much. And even over the past 5 to 10 years, I hire people with earrings in their eyebrows and coming out of I don't care. If the person can do the work, it doesn't matter to me. And I even have them, and maybe not have them interacting with law firms, but actually, no, I do. I just hired someone with an earring in one of their ears, a man. So it doesn't matter. No one cares anymore as much. So and I've got another person that works with me that has a giant stick coming out of her ear. I don't know what it's. But the thing about the stubble or clean shave, I think the guy that does all my podcasts and videos with me, who's actually here right now, and he's got long hair, and I think he's had a beard and occasionally he's probably got a lot of facial hair. So I don't think anybody cares. I think that the society actually welcomes these differences. Now, I will say that there are some law firms that are more conservative than others on the market that you're in. But I would say if you have a neat stubble, I would probably prefer a clean shave if it's very easy compared to that. But some people, it's on however you want to be perceived. Just keep in mind that how you present yourself makes a major difference in whether or not the law firm is going to hire you and whether or not you're going to get hired. And I've had a lot of instances where I've had just people come in that however they wanted to present themselves wasn't right. So I had one woman come in once wearing a giant dog collar for an interview. And that made me uncomfortable. I don't know, it had spikes coming out of it and that she had black, and this is and so, this stuff's okay, but you have to think some places would love that. And I just didn't. But anytime you do something that makes yourself stand out in any way, be prepared for the consequences, both good and bad. And that's kind of my opinion. So here's someone who asked a question. I'm answering all these questions so people are still staying on this call. So I'm going to answer everything. But this question is, how was your experience as a litigating lawyer? Would you advise law students to choose the path of litigation as their career? So that's a good question. So basically, when you're thinking about what you want to do, you have transactional law, which is real estate, I don't know, a bunch of things. You can figure it out, finance. And then you have transactional, you have writing, there's compensation, insurance defense. I'm going to make this kind of very simple for you to explain the two differences between this. And these are important choices that junior attorneys make. And so I want to just be very clear with you. So people that are good at these kind of things typically are people that gravitate naturally, naturally towards math and science. So meaning, what did you enjoy most in school? Did you like doing that? Would you rather work with play with a chemistry set, or and what would the other option be? Or would you rather read a book or do math problems? And then people that do this gravitate towards English, you get it, social sciences, history, and that sort of thing. Now, in my case, like I did very well on the math SATs, much better than English, but I'm clearly, in terms of where my interest lay, I'm much more suited to doing litigation related work. And so you just have to think about that. So that's the first thing. People that are not natural litigators, that are transactional attorneys that go into litigation, typically are not very happy. So that was the first thing when I would say to choose the path as a career. Now, here's the good, the bad, and the ugly. Litigation is stressful as hell if you're good at it. It's a freaking nightmare. And the reason is because your opposing counsel is out to hit you, meaning they want to make you screw up. Your judge is adverse, meaning clients do not like being bills and they're adverse. You get that. The senior attorneys waiting for you to screw up, meaning partner, associates, for partners, for people. It's difficult to get business compared to corporate because you don't have ongoing relationships and you lose half the time. Whereas when you're a corporate attorney is meeting with, companies all the time. And I could keep going about the reasons it's difficult, but you have clients. So these are your bosses. So these people, and then also litigators in the same firm, and this is for all attorneys, but litigators in the same firm, in your own firm, may be out to get. I say that not as a paranoid person, but just as I'm just basically giving you the lowdown. And I was watching, I'm not going to get too far into this, but there's quantum theory, which is basically physics. And in quantum theory, basically says that when something is observed, it is different in a different state than when it's not observed. And there's anybody that's taken any science knows exactly what I'm talking about. But the reason I like this theory, quantum theory, is if you're a litigator, you have so much freaking negativity coming in. Like you're getting letters from attorneys all day, every day, calling you stupid, making fun of you, trying to get you to screw up. The judge is ruling against you and lecturing you half the time. The clients are always upset that they're paying these bills and don't like it. The senior attorneys, partners are pushing you. The hours can be very long if there's deadlines. It's hard to get business. And so hours long. And it's just, you have to thrive and get excited based on all this conflict. And so what I've seen throughout the years, and I just want to be as respectful as possible, but I've seen so many attorneys die very young. I've seen them, they start dying typically in their late 30s and then their early 40s, like a lot of them start dying. It's a certain kind of person that just can't handle the stress. Most of them, because of all the stress, a lot of them will drink, they'll use drugs, they'll smoke, and it's just part of the game. Now, not everybody's like that. Some people are naturally built to handle the stress, and it's just they don't, like, their ego doesn't get involved and it doesn't stress them out. And an example would be some of the attorneys that I've worked with in the past, like these partners are just brilliant and they can keep it together and they're perfectly fine. But for some people, if you can fall into this pit, it can be very difficult. But if you like this sort of thing, and if you do or not, if the idea of it excites you and you just think about it, the idea of something excites you, and then you're probably fit for it. And just because one branch of litigation is stressful for you doesn't mean others will be. It just depends on the level that you're working at. For the most part, it's a very difficult job. And most of the litigators that I knew practicing law that I saw start, things didn't turn out well for them. And it's not the fault of the firms. It's not the fault. It's just how the system works. Most people get very disillusioned and it's so much negativity coming at you that it can be very hard. So if you're a very happy person and right now, and judges are stressing you out, you're having all these deadlines hit you several times a day, daily, you daily or weekly, it could be very stressful. Now, again, there's certain people that are cut out for this. And if you think it's something that you can figure out and not get your ego involved, then you're great. There's like the people that are really good at this, so have a Zen-like thing to them. It's not like the ones that look stressed out are the ones that have problems. And honestly, like I see a lot of people that are still doing it that started around the time I did and or even later. And when I meet them, they look like, they're my age, but they look 20 years like older, and they look like sailors or something, like, teeth are all brown and and frowns permanently etched on their face. And they've been working offices all the time. So their skin is not tan. And I don't know. And those are them. So everyone handles things differently. And at the same time, if you find someone that's really good, then you're not going to have that. But that's what's stressful about being a litigator. And it's something to really think about, because for me, I think when I did it, I loved the writing. I loved the argument. I loved the putting this stuff together, but all this other stuff that kind of went along with it wasn't fun for me. And even though I could handle it, I got consumed by it. And so certain people will get consumed by it, others won't. I didn't like it when clients got mad at me. It got me all riled up. I didn't like it when I got negative letters from attorneys. It got me riled up, and I would fume about it or write something back. I didn't like it when I had to stay up 3 nights in a row writing a brief or something. I didn't like that. And I didn't like that even if I did well on something, my peers were not necessarily excited for me. They were bad because it made them look bad. So it's just, you have to think about it. And I didn't like that it was so difficult to get business as a young attorney. Like if you're in corporate or transactional thing, if you're interested in estates, you can find business very easily. There's tons of people that entrust in estates work, but in this type of work, it's much different. Okay. So I hope that answered your question. That was a great answer, that one. That's not really a real question. Just trying to ask, how can it be hard to do legal research without a degree? Anyone can get hired to do legal research without a degree. The idea basically is you can be a paralegal and all sorts of things. And the better work you do, you'll be fine. That's great. I don't think you'll have any problem doing that. I would just apply to firms with this level of confidence. If you think yourself confident, amazing. If you have that sort of confidence, then you'll definitely be able to get jobs. BCG work with non-U.S. residents. I just finished my JD in 221, seeker, but I am not a resident of the U.S. Okay. No, we do, but it depends. That's great that you are finishing your JD, but there's sponsorship issued unless you, like, for example, if you worked in a law firm doing a certain type of work, say it was project finance or something in your home country, and now you came over and got a JD, then you might be able to get a job. But typically law firms do not like to hire and won't hire people coming out of law school, because they imagine there's so many people that are already doing that. Okay. These are great. I'll just answer this one question here just because it's an attorney, but middle-aged students can be fairly interested in environmental, can't decide what's your career advice. My career advice is to take a job at the best firm. Yeah. That whatever they do. That's, yeah. I would say elder law is probably a better long-term career prospect. Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for being on the webinar today. This was a long one. This was obviously a very important one. And I commend everyone for coming to these and learning about all this stuff, because there's so much information. There's so many things to learn about this career. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate if you recommend this to other people and you had a good experience. I appreciate that too. And certainly I look forward to talking to everyone again next week. Thanks again. Bye.